9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and I'm so tremendously excited that you've joined us today because we have the honor of speaking with Nathan Seaward, host of the Nathan Seaward Show and a pilot for many, many years. Nathan's a total badass. I'm massively excited to get to know him a little bit better and to dig into who he is as a person. So without any further ado, Nathan, how the heck are you?
Oh, Ben, thank you for that wonderful intro. I'm great. Never better.
All righty, man. So let's jump right in. I want to know, what is your story?
Well, I have a weird accent, so half of your listeners will understand about 50% of what I say, which is because I'm from New Zealand originally, which is a little country in the bottom of the world. And that's where I grew up. And New Zealand is a beautiful country. Everything you hear about it is true. Very egalitarian. So I had a wonderful childhood, lots of long summers, and, good times in New Zealand. And some of the defining moments for me, my mum is Canadian. She's from Montreal. I spent a lot of time flying between New Zealand and Montreal as a kid. And it was back in the day where the cockpit was completely open. So my parents would kind of drift off to sleep, and then I would, as a 7-year-old, sneak up to the cockpit and just spend hours, sitting in the cockpit talking to the pilots, and just it was just fascinating to me, these kind of mysterious people and this crazy life that they live flying all around the world. So that's a little bit of the seed of where aviation comes into my life. I went to a private school, an all-boys private school in high school that was quite a tough school, I would say. And early on, when I was around 12 or 13, I realized I was gay. And the second thought I had was, I can never be gay. It felt like a death sentence. And like this all-boys school, they call people homo, faggot. Like that was just, it felt like a death sentence to be gay. So I had very early on that very troubling sense that I needed to kind of hide my true self. It sort of ended up becoming quite overwhelming trying to hide that, as you can imagine. So I came out when I was 22 and really discovered the power of authenticity and just how much all of us are in the closet in some way, and how freeing it can be to come out of the closet. And at the same time, I left high school, got into flying, became a flying instructor for 4 years. It's an incredible job. And then joined the airlines when I was 22. And flew for a number of different airlines, the last one being in Japan, one of the biggest airlines in Japan, and flew all around the world, all over Asia, and just had a really extraordinary career. There was always a seed of entrepreneurship in the background as well. And I think part of my journey of coming out was, and trying to understand being gay and understanding this challenge, was looking towards a lot of self-help and a lot of personal development and trying to understand life in the world. And so personal development and entrepreneurship are quite closely linked in my experience. So a lot of seeds were planted around money mindset, financial abundance, creating a business, getting out of the job sort of trap. And so, I washed cars for $20 a car when I was a kid. My brother and I started a fish and chip restaurant when I was 22. He was a bit older. And we tried to franchise fish and chips in New Zealand. It was like a really crazy experience that burnt us both out. And by the time I was in my early 30s, I was kind of getting the sense that flying was started to run its course. It was an amazing job, a dream job for a lot of guys and girls. But it was feeling like it had run its course. And so I was looking for the next thing. I ended up going through a bad breakup, which forced me to hire a coach to try and understand all of this. And then through being coached myself, I fell in love with the coaching process and started exploring how I could become a coach myself. So fast forward, a couple of years ago, I grew my coaching business to the point where I could leave flying. And so made the big step, left my career behind, went and sold all my things, traveled the world for 2 years, just coaching anybody who wanted to be coached. And it kind of leads me up to today.
And where does the podcast fit into that journey?
So early on, like when I first started coaching, which I imagine is the same for a lot of coaches, I just wanted to coach anybody, just anybody that wanted coaching, relationship, business, anything, you name it. And I always wanted to start a podcast. I love podcasts. I'm a voracious listener to podcasts. I love the medium and I love the intimacy of it. And I was thinking, what would be a really interesting podcast? Now, one of the dark sides of New Zealand culture is we have a very high suicide rate, which is very surprising for a lot of people because it's a beautiful country, very wealthy. But there's quite a dark side to it in lots of different ways. And it was the thing that really brought me to tears, just thinking about, we have the highest teen suicide rate in the developed world, which is like heartbreaking. I can't even, deal talking about it. And so I just thought, man, I wonder if I could create a podcast that tried to get to the bottom of why so many people are committing suicide. And in particular, 75% of people were men. And so that's how the podcast started, was just interviewing men and trying to understand men's issues and why men killing themselves, talking to New Zealanders, talking to psychologists, talking to famous authors, talking to NFL players, entrepreneurs. And I did about 50 episodes from that place. And then I realized it's a little bit dark to listen to that kind of stuff. It can be a little bit dark. So what if I flip the coin and went, instead of focusing on how to prevent suicide, why don't I talk to people about how to create an extraordinary life? And so for the last 35 episodes, we're up to 85, it's been more about like, how do you cultivate an extraordinary life? And what does that look like?
Wow. So I want to jump back into those years and I want to be extraordinarily respectful and I just want to recognize that this may be a sensitive topic.
Yeah, I'm an open book.
Okay, so I would like to learn more about the age of 13 to 22, right? When you realized that you were gay, but you felt like it was a death sentence, so you struggled in that time. What was that actually like? Like, what did that feel like to be living in, for lack of a better term, an inauthentic place?
Heartbreaking, lonely. It's so sad to think about it now, but it felt very real at the time. I just remember thinking, maybe I can marry a woman, maybe I can make this work, which a lot of people end up doing. Or maybe I'd just be single for the rest of my life and no one would ever have to know. And so just even the fact that was where my thinking is going, it breaks my heart today to think about that young guy going through that. But yeah, incredibly lonely. I had girlfriends from about 19 to 22. So I was kind of giving it the college try. And I just thought, man, I just can't do this. I'd become so wrapped up in personal development and just really loved personal development and self-help that, being authentic and being yourself and being true to yourself is just this constant message. I had huge aspirations regardless of my sexuality. I was a very ambitious person and still am. And so I just realized, well, kind of came to the realization, I think I would rather lose friends and lose family and just be completely on my own, but be authentic and true to myself.
Wow.
And ended up losing no friends or no family. Certainly challenging for a lot of people, but yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. And I think I'm naturally quite a straight looking guy. I think that comes from spending my teenage years really pretending to be straight. So it was kind of easy for me to fit in and pretend. We had World Pride here in New York this weekend. Huge, biggest Pride festival in history. And one of the things that was tough for me to see, it's the first time I've been to a Pride festival, one of the things that's tough for me to see is like I bent myself to fit into the world, and seeing so many people at the Pride festival that didn't do that they went, we're not going to fit in, we're going to celebrate and be who we are, we're going to create our own world. So that kind of gives you a little taste of like who I am and how I was through that period, I think.
At what point did you recognize that personal development and self-improvement was like a thing? And how did you get into that, I guess, state of mind? It's hard to really quantify like what that is, but how did you really get into it?
Curious mind, incredibly curious mind. Like if I had to sum up myself as a little boy, my pre-teen years, it would be why. Just asking why about everything. And I had a family member that was incredibly wealthy. And so I had this view of like, I got access to seeing what a wealthy life looked like. And I just remember thinking, why isn't my parents like that? Why can't we do it? And they had all the reasons why. And I just kept thinking, well, those are just excuses. Like why are some people wealthy and other people aren't? Like what, come on, figure this out. There must be a way to figure this out. And so I think the first book I read when I was like 12 was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I got about a chapter and I think it was just sort of over my head. But read Rich Dad, Poor Dad next and just kind of went, wow, like I totally get it. You don't want to have a job. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to have assets instead of liabilities. So I remember like 13 or 14 just going like, how are some people successful and other people not? And I just wouldn't let that go.
That's awesome. So
funny to remember back to that.
Once you did get that, like you kind of caught the bug, how did that then manifest itself into your life? Like where did you take that?
So it was about flying at that point. And so I was so disconnected from high school. I think the fact being gay, being around a bunch of manly guys that were pretty awful, bullies. Flying was the thing that I could hold on to as like my escape. So my parents, who were incredible when I think about it, I said I'm into flying. They went, well, see if you can do flying lessons. So go out to the airport and found a way and like, oh, there's no age limit on flying lessons. So I took my first flying lesson when I was 12, like kind of looking over the dashboard with a big cushion on the seat. And, went solo at 16, got my private license at 17 before I had a driver's license. And so there was this real escapism from all that pain of high school. So I think I channeled all of personal development and visioning and manifesting into creating an incredible career. And I had an incredible flying career. Like I was never unemployed for 15 years, which is pretty rare. Got every job I ever went for, loved every second of it, really. So I think that's how I focused it, was into my flying career.
So it seems like 22 was a massive, massive year for you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. It's because I waited. So I got my first airline job when I was 22, which is a big step for everyone. It's a whole other story. But that allowed me to move out of my hometown for the first time, 22 years. So that was the trigger to go, okay, this is probably the time to come out because I'm not at home. I don't have to deal with the day-to-day repercussions of it. I can come home, drop the bombshell, head back to my new city and, let everything settle. So it kind of all coincided with that.
So right before that, right? I'm not exactly sure the right way to to say that. What did you feel? Like what were the emotions going through you?
Before I came out?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to connect to that. It's been so long. But I told my best friend first on Christmas Eve, and then told some other friends on New Year's Eve. Thought, okay, I have to kind of tell my parents. So I told my mother about a week later, and just said, "I'm not straight." It's all I could manage to kind of utter out, and she was very accepting. She got it. I think, I'm an only child, so a little bit of heartbreak around grandchildren and stuff like that. That's where her mind went to. I just said, please don't tell Dad. I knew my dad wouldn't take it that well. And she phoned me about 2 days later and said, I've told your dad. She didn't want to keep it from him and sort of wanted to go through it with him, which I totally understand. And there's a lot of homophobic gay people, including me. And homophobia is a fear of homosexuality, right? By definition. And so, when I was 22, although I came out, I still had a tremendous fear of what it meant. I probably hated that part of myself, didn't want to express it in any way, was still very ashamed and embarrassed by it. So a lot of people struggled to deal with it, and I was kind of like, I kind of got it because I was ashamed of it. I kind of was okay that people didn't get it. So I wasn't loud and proud. It was just something I uttered out and sort of dealt with the repercussions.
When you then, you're on the same page now with your friends and your family. And again, I recognize this could be a very sensitive subject, but what happened at that point? I mean, was there a sense of liberation and better connection, or was it more standoffish? Like, what actually happened?
I think there was a period of about 6 months where it was very standoffish. Unfortunately, I was in the airline at that point, so I just buried myself into that. It was such an exciting time. My dad and I didn't really talk for about 6 months. It was quite hard. My best friend felt lied to, because we'd been going out with girls together. And so he felt very betrayed, which is a common theme. And so I think although everybody understands the situation, you still have to honor that sense of, there was a part of you that was lying to your friends and family. And again, everybody understands it, and it's a lot of compassion for that. But I think it took me 10 years to come to terms with it. So I didn't expect people to come to terms with it in 5 minutes. And I think that can be a little bit of an issue we have in the LGBT community, is being a little bit hard on people that don't fully understand our community or what we go through, because it took us so long to come to terms with it. So we have to be careful to not shame straight people, but actually help educate people and help people understand and give them a chance to get it wrong and not jump down their throats and, beat them up for saying the wrong thing. I'm really against that kind of thing. So I think that's the process I went through for that kind of 6 months afterwards, was just giving people space. New Zealand's a very, it's a British colony. So, it's that sort of repressed Anglo Christian culture that we have down there. So, a lot of it was just like, okay, yep, that's great that you've come out. Let's never talk about it. Let's sweep it under the rug. And that's fine. We all accept you, but, let's not talk about it. So again, in reflection, at the time, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's a very shameful thing. I shouldn't talk about it. Now in hindsight, I'm like, oh God, that was so horrible to have to never be able to talk about boyfriends, or never be able to talk about the challenges of being gay, or the feelings that came up, or what I was going through. Yeah.
So how did that impact your career? And I'm interested to learn from both the pilot airline side and then also from the personal development, self-improvement side, because it seems like in the beginning that personal development was really focused on the being a pilot. But then it seems like it's almost unimaginable that it wouldn't then encompass all parts of you and really be important for all aspects of your life.
Yeah, I think it was less so in being gay and understanding how to be gay. I think it was less so. I don't know why. I didn't read a lot of self-help personal development books on being gay or how to, and that's probably a regret. So I probably wish that I maybe dived into some therapy or some counseling or just did some reading early on. But I think the shame was so great. But it's a double-edged sword in the airline industry, right? Because on one hand, I don't know if people know this, but the cockpit is a very masculine place. And even more so in America, actually, in other places. They've flown with all nationalities at this point. And it's a very masculine, let's just leave it at that. It's a very masculine industry. And on the flip side, you've got in the back of the airplane an incredibly openly gay community and flight attendants. So like I was always in this interesting position of getting on really well with, you know, gay flight attendants and just having this incredible community of open, proud gay people. And then spending the majority of the flight with very masculine, strong people that maybe weren't so connected to their sexuality. So I think I found that challenging. And again, it's like all men go through. This is not just gay men, but just the idea of trying to be a man, not show weakness, you know, be strong. And certainly flying big airplanes that's a lot of the culture. You know, it's just be strong, don't show any weakness. When the plane is on fire, there should be only two people that aren't panicking, that are like keeping it together. Should be the pilots. So I think again, like this is all in reflection, that was quite challenging. Again, I just adapted and just tried to be manly and didn't speak up or just made sure no one felt threatened by my gayness, you know, which sounds so ridiculous now. So I think, again, like I just really worked hard to fit in. And I have to say, there's a ton of people that were amazing. So I'm kind of painting everyone with the same brush, but there were a ton of pilots that were incredible, that were really open, really fun, asked lots of questions about it, you know, really, really cool. So I don't want to say it was completely horrific. There was a ton of people that were incredibly helpful and supportive as well.
I feel like at this stage that we've gotten to in your chronology, authenticity is probably, and this is just a guess, but I would imagine that authenticity is probably a big thing at that point.
Yeah.
So can you talk about your journey with authenticity and how you went about that journey? What was going through your mind, like you know, your feelings about it, your emotions about it, your thoughts about it?
I don't think it was a conscious journey. Again, you know, this is all in hindsight, but I think, you know, when I came out of the closet, that was really making a declaration that authenticity was a number one value of mine, whether or not I could say it in those words. But yeah, I started to realize that authenticity was a huge value. And so, I don't know, I think that might have been there before I was gay. I think just this kind of why thing I had as a child, I think that's a seeking for the truth that I was always interested in. So I have a feeling that it's always been there. But so authenticity for me means, you know, really being honest with yourself and being honest with what you want. And, you know, if we explore the shadow side or the dark side, really being authentic with that part of yourself, you know, even if it's just being authentic with yourself. I just see so much freedom in it, you know, so much freedom. And I think it's obvious to most people when somebody is inauthentic, you know, in different parts, and it just looks so heavy for that person. And so I try and notice, when am I being inauthentic? Because I just don't want to carry any weight around. I don't want to have anything hanging off me that's heavy or that I have to think about or energetically feels really like it's weighing me down. I think that's why it's super important to me.
Wow. I think that's beautiful. And, just on a personal level, like, I feel like authenticity is very, very important to me too. And,
Mhm.
I strive to be more and more authentic with everything that I do. And, I'm so grateful for this show because I get to talk to incredible people like you who can help, I feel like you're helping to educate me. So I'm so eternally grateful for that. But, just as an example, I've written a couple books now, and so I started to turn my creative writing to poetry lately, and that has just been so fascinating. But then it's like, wait, do I'm supposed to be this business person, this entrepreneur. What happens if I talk about my poetry? Like, what does that do? How does that affect like your reputation? How does that affect your view of yourself or other people's view of you? So it's like, but if you're not open about it, then you're not being authentic, right? So like, how have you worked with, being as authentic as possible, and at the same time building, for your show, for example, like building your audience and building your tribe and really connecting with other people? Like, how's that dynamic worked out?
Well, I think thank you for sharing that part of you as well, because I think that's a common thing. I have a client that I'm working with at the moment who's got a business he's working on that's at odds with his current business. And he's like, I'm going to dilute my brand and everything. I mean, whatever, I'm not a branding expert. It doesn't worry me too much, but that's a fear, right? That's coming from fear. So you have this beautiful, authentic feeling of like, man, what if I feel some poetry coming through me? Like, what is more genuine and inspired and beautiful than that, And then a fear kicks in to try and keep it away. So I think it's just, all I noticed was that distinction, right? This higher self, this calling, this thing coming through me versus a fear, which is, it's just a fear.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think putting authenticity and vulnerability as very high values, that I think that's what people have come to know me as, or know me for. And it's the comment I get from my guests as well as the listeners constantly is just like, man, thank you so much. Thank you for being vulnerable. My guests, much like I imagine I'll be feeling tomorrow, my guests always say, man, I have a vulnerability hangover from that conversation. It was, you really cracked me open. But I get the sense that you're very similar, is you're pretty comfortable in navigating the waters of vulnerability and authenticity. And I'm sure, similar to me, that's probably what your show and what your listeners have come to expect from this show. So, yeah, I mean, you could talk about the fear-based stuff of how it impacts, but, my commitment, I always think about, what's my commitment to my listeners? My commitment is vulnerability and honesty and authenticity first. And so sometimes, like, I have to say, I'm not feeling good. I don't really want to do this interview today. Sometimes I have to say that I ran out of money and my business is struggling. And I don't want to say that. I don't want to tell anybody that. But again, I come back and I go, well, what is my commitment to my listeners? It's that I be authentic and vulnerable in service of them.
I
So
love that.
I try and hold it as a value, if that makes sense, as opposed to something that might conflict with other things.
Almost like keeping it like an asset instead of a liability.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I love how vulnerability and authenticity and honesty are all kind of, you kind of put them together. And because I don't think that they're the same thing, but I do think that they're very, very, very interconnected and very related.
Mm.
How did you get to a place where you felt comfortable connecting them all and working with all of those three things? Those are three very powerful things. Like, how did you come to that place with those three things specifically?
Practice. I mean, a podcast it's practice, and you don't know who's going to listen to it. uh, so the definition of vulnerability is that it's going to be uncomfortable. So I don't think you ever get comfortable with it. You just get comfortable with the discomfort. And it's, I love what Brené Brown says about it's having the courage to tell your story. Having the courage to tell your story. That's sort of the heart of what vulnerability is. And she also says there's a lot of nuance in Brené's work that gets lost because, so many sort of memes and quotes get bandied around. But she also says that people have to earn the right to hear your story. So again, my commitment through my podcast and with my clients is to be super vulnerable and honest and authentic, but I'm really trying to model what that looks like, especially as a man, gay or straight, doesn't matter. As a man, like how to be honest and be vulnerable and actually show that that's a sign of strength because of how hard it is. It's not a sign of weakness. I'm trying to model those things. So I'm driven by those, by that mission and that value of being authentic. So I wouldn't encourage everybody to just go and share openly with everyone. First thing is to be authentic and honest with yourself, which is journaling or with a coach or something like that. And then people have to earn the right to have your vulnerability. They have to earn the right to hear your authentic story.
I love that. I love that because at that point, it feels like your vulnerability and your honesty and your courage is really a gift to be shared with others and, shared very, very openly, but it's still a gift. So it may not be for everybody. That's kind of what that makes me think of, how that, how that kind of registered in my mind.
Yeah. Because there are people that aren't up for it or won't treat your honesty with reverence.
I definitely agree. And
it happens a lot. One of my clients decided, right, I'm going to be vulnerable and authentic everywhere. And so he was the owner of a big business. So he started just openly sharing with all his employees and with everybody and his managers and anybody that came in to interview, he would share them. And his team got together and had an intervention for him and just said, you're scaring people off. You're saying some really wacky stuff and we get that it's vulnerable and it's super honest, but you got to rein it in. So that's an example of kind of going too far. Most people won't be in that extreme. Most people will be at the other end of the spectrum. But yeah, it's a good thing. Is make sure people have earned the right to hear your story.
That's fascinating. Because where I feel that and I guess it may be a little bit of pressure almost of how much do you share is, I'm Jewish, so it's in my Judaism and, not even remotely getting political at all. But, a lot of people have just a lot of ill will against people who are Jewish. And it's just, it's just a fact of life. And, I feel very fortunate that I have the choice of whether or not I tell people that I'm Jewish or bring it up or whatever. But, many a time, I've been in a group of people and, they're not Jewish and somebody makes a Jewish joke. And then it's like, okay, well, what do you do? What do you do in that point? Do you own up to it and be like, hey, I don't like that. I don't like how that makes me feel. I want you to stop, or either, I'd like you to stop or I'm going to remove myself from the situation. Or do you just let it slide? Or is that being authentic? Is that being inauthentic? That, and I don't know the answer. I don't know the right answer. So I'm interested to learn how would you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, well, it's, my sense is we're getting a little bit analytical, a little bit up in our head about it. as opposed to just really feeling in. I don't think authenticity is like an analysis of going like, okay, what's the limit? When do I go? Like, what's my cutoff point? I think it's something you feel into moment to moment. And hey, this happened to me being gay a million times, right? People telling gay jokes or not realizing I'm gay or whatever. And some days I feel super courageous and I'll stand up and I'll go, hey, I'm gay and that's not okay. And other days I'll go, I don't want to have this conversation. This feels kind of scary and intimidating and uncomfortable, So I think it's nuanced, it's nuanced, and it's what you feel in the moment and what do you want to stand for. What did you do in that situation?
Sometimes, well, I guess the last time it happened, I was with a good friend and I was with his friends. And this particular gentleman I had observed, because whenever I'm in like a medium to large social gathering, I really like to observe my surroundings, and I'm not that talkative most of the time. So I had observed that this individual was always wanted to be the life of the party, and was always kind of pushing the line, and I recognized that it was not a direct attack on me by any means, because he didn't even know. At the same time, I felt that there was and perhaps this is arrogance on my part, but I thought he's probably just ignorant in that regard, in that regard, ignorant to the fact that both I'm Jewish and that he probably doesn't know that many Jewish people, because if he did, I don't think he'd be telling those jokes. And so I chose to not like cause a scene at the party, because it was just a relaxed barbecue, and I just let it go. And of course I didn't laugh because I didn't think it was funny, but I just kind of let it go, and then after one or two it stopped, and then life went on. It was fine after that.
Yeah. And so you felt okay about it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm still talking about it now, so I'm not sure if I feel okay about it or not. But part of me thinks I should have said like, "Hey, I don't think that's funny." So I don't know. I don't know the right answer. I don't have the right answer.
I think it's I love the thinking though, and I think that's such an evolved way of thinking and a very conscious way of thinking, of going, this guy's probably just ignorant. He probably just doesn't know a lot of Jewish people. And like it's the same for gay people. I think there's a lot of homophobia. There's just a lot of fear of homosexuality, especially for straight men that are trying not to look gay or don't want to look weak or don't want to even think about the possibility that they may be gay. There's a lot of fear of homosexuality. Whereas when you look at the Pride Parade on the weekend, it's just love. It's just love and people celebrating being themselves. Like it could not be more beautiful, the whole event. So what's to be scared of, right? But I think again that not getting in that reactive mode, not getting triggered, not having the ego wanting to stand up and just murder that guy first saying think about you, how dare you, but kind of going, okay, well, if I was to say something, maybe I could go in a more educational role. Because it may be that just this person doesn't know. Most people don't know that many gay people.
I love that. Yeah, it's just fascinating to me, how other people think about similar situations. And I recognize it's not the same. It's definitely not the same. And I would never try to claim that it is the same by any way, shape, or form. But I think there are similarities that, at least to me, are very, very interesting and very meaningful to discuss. So I'm very grateful that you would go there with me.
Totally, yeah. You're welcome. One of my best friends in New York is Irish, and he just put up with me the other day. He goes, how many Irish jokes there are out there? And it's kind of interesting. Yeah, you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's true. And maybe an unpopular opinion. Can I share something else?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love comedy
Me too.
and I love joking around. And so I'm always conscious of not beating the humor out of life and making it all super serious, because it's not serious. It's hilarious. We're all like on this rock flying through space trying to, I don't know, feed ourselves and love people. So it's pretty hilarious. So sometimes I love comedy, and the best comedians will tell you that a joke is not about the person, it's about the situation.
Right.
So when you're making fun of the fact that that guy's gay or the fact that guy's Jewish, that's not funny. That's hurtful and it's not great humor. But there are Jewish people in the world, there are gay people in the world, there are handicapped people in the world, you know. And so if we don't make jokes about them, are we just pretending that they don't exist? I think that's equally as weird or like offensive. So it's kind of understanding that, hey, we have this crazy mix of people on this earth, and it's hilarious all the situations that come up. So I just want to throw that in there. I think they can be unpopular, but I love comedy, and I never want to take away from the humor of life as well.
Oh, dude, I totally agree. And my family, my dad and my grandpa specifically, they are so funny, dude. They have a joke for everything. And it's so comical watching them get into this zone, because almost anything you say, it will like a certain word, it'll trigger a joke in their mind that they then cannot help but share. And then they kind of set each other off. So my grandpa will say one, then my dad will say one, then my grandpa, then I'll jump in and say one. It is so funny.
There's nothing more beautiful than that. Like,
yeah. And like it's especially when a new person comes to the table, because we're big on food, we always like to eat together. So when somebody new comes to the table and they have a fresh audience, oh man, it's so funny. But I'll be the first one to say, probably a greater majority than any other type of joke are Jewish jokes, because we make fun of ourselves more than we make fun of anybody else. And I think that's what is so funny about it.
Yeah. It's magical. My father and I have had a strained relationship, I think, around being gay, but just generally. And I did ayahuasca last year, a couple of ceremonies. And one of the intentions of one of the ceremonies was, how do I heal my relationship with my father? How do I make it beautiful? And went on a ton of, it's an 8-hour journey. So there's a ton of different insights. But one of the ones that was really funny was, I don't know if you know much about ayahuasca, but the mother ayahuasca is sort of this feminine presence that speaks to you during the ceremony. And so she said, just laugh with them. Just laugh with them. And I was like, seems a little bit simple. But so I tried it for like the next few weeks, or as soon as I got on the phone with my dad, I'd just tell him a joke. And I just saw him soften, because I think I'd been so much trying to like improve our relationship and call him out on things, and he would call me out on things, that almost when we got into conversation, he kind of started with his back up a little bit, going, what's Nathan going to attack me for this time? So just this idea of like telling a joke first and, breaking that tension, it was genius.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So how did you get to the place where you wanted to explore with ayahuasca? Because I've had guests on before who have explored with that. And that is eternally fascinating to me. Like, yeah.
Well, I think what I believe, I've heard this, but I actually believe it myself, is that ayahuasca calls you. Ayahuasca calls you to it. So I made a personal pact to not recommend it, or not recommend it. So I don't advise people about ayahuasca at all. That's the first disclaimer. I lived in Costa Rica, so I think I mentioned I spent the last 2 years fully nomadic, just traveling the world. So I lived in Costa Rica for 3 months. And I had a friend that said, hey, I want to come and join you. And he goes, oh, I got a friend down there that does ayahuasca. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about it. Sounds exciting. Been wanting to kind of try it for a few years. And then we ended up driving to this random place that I wasn't really paying attention where we were going. And at some point during the ceremony, I was like, man, this is pretty traumatizing. And this mother ayahuasca said, where are you? I was like, actually, I don't really know where I am. I kind of wasn't really paying attention. And she goes, why are you in Costa Rica? I was like, yeah, I don't really know. Like, why did I choose Costa Rica? I just kind of randomly decided to come here for 3 months. I didn't really have it. Yeah, and she just sort of started laughing, about this. It was just this experience of like, I brought you here to go through this. And I was like, whew, that's crazy. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I realize how ridiculous this sounds. But it's that experience of being called to it. So I always say to people, hey, if it's calling you, go for it.
When you're saying like Mother Ayahuasca was calling or maybe not so much, but talking, for lack of a better way to describe it, how did you receive that? Was it like a thought that was in your own voice, or was it her or its voice? I'm like, how did that manifest itself?
This is the point where the audience divides into those that have done psychedelics and those that haven't. I don't know. I'm not artistic enough to explain what a psychedelic trip is in words, but yeah, it's wild. I mean, it could be images, it could be feelings, it could be sounds, it could be. I mean, it's hard to describe.
Cool.
It's probably an unsatisfying answer for you, but it's how it is. Yeah.
That's interesting. So after that experience, do you feel like you were fundamentally changed as a person, or that you just gained new insights in some areas?
It's such a great question. I wish everybody would ask that question, people that have done ayahuasca. I'm not sure. Another unsatisfying answer. But I think everything in life is a tool to generate insights. So whether you go and do a silent meditation retreat, or whether you do ayahuasca, or whether you do a Ironman, these are all just things that generate insights about us. And this is the coach coming out of me, but insights without integration are really useless. They're interesting, but not really transformative. And so I came out of my ayahuasca journey with 100 insights. I just shared one with you, right? Like, just joke around with your dad. Stop trying to be so serious. And if I'd just gone, wow, that's interesting, and never done anything about it, did ayahuasca really do anything for me? But it's the integration, that all of these things that make it transformative, which is why I'm so passionate about coaching, because coaching is all about helping you integrate insights into your life. But I think, I'm not sure, I think there was also a very powerful healing energy that took place during the ceremony. How do you prove that? I don't know. So my feeling is that it was a combination of healing and insights that, with integration, are very transformative.
Wow. Well, that's super cool.
Yeah.
That's super, super cool.
I mean, that is the most wild experience of my life. Like, the first ceremony was beautiful, went for 8 hours, loved it, just got all these amazing insights, having a great time, giggling with the guy who I was with. And then the second ceremony was like traumatizing. But again, like, trusting that it needed to be traumatizing for what I was trying to get out of it. It was deep and it was challenging, so it's not something you do every day.
Yeah, definitely not every single day.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the idea of like becoming addicted to psychedelics is so hilarious, because it's impossible.
Yeah.
Put yourself through that constantly.
So I love what you said about life is about gaining insight, and or roughly
Yeah.
you're saying, and that different events are different, I guess, milestones of insight, or new nuggets of insight. How do you feel like that facet of life um, works with your overall, or the overall purpose of life?
Can you ask it a different way?
Sure. Maybe it's multiple questions. The first is, what do you feel like what do you feel like your purpose in life is?
Mm. I think it's a fool's errand to try and sum it up into words. And I think a lot of people, including myself, get stuck in that trap of going, what's my purpose? Why haven't I got a nice little catchphrase to, have my purpose? My belief is that you're on purpose. You're alive. You're doing your thing. Like, you're on purpose. You're on purpose. Like, as I've followed my intuition, and as I've followed my heart more than anything, and as I've followed my being authentic, it just keeps taking me more and more towards helping people live their best life. It sounds cheesy, but really helping people to express their genius into the world and do so in a way that benefits everybody, or benefits people on the planet in different ways. So what my genius is, like what I'm amazing at, is sitting with people and having conversations that allow them to explore that truth, explore their intuition, understand what actually is authentic to them. And it ultimately just ends up in them peeling layers away to come back to loving themselves. And I'm talking about like multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs. I'm not talking about like woo-woo spiritual stuff. I'm talking about really powerful, amazing people that over time I'm just really loving them and helping them tap into their genius and their mission so they can kind of love themselves and love their own life. That's the truth.
Those insights, how did you develop, like when did you develop that, or those particular insights? Like, has this been an ongoing philosophy that you've kind of tinkered with over time? That was supposed to be a hammer, like tinkered with over time, and then you've kind of added to it and taken away from it and adding and morphing and shifting it? Or was there a point when it was just like, this is it, this is my thing?
It's another great question, because you've heard pretty much my life story, right? So you can probably find some threads through that led me to it, and none of it was clear along the way. So it's easy to go back and go, oh, this happened. Oh, I can see. Yeah. Oh, that took me to that. But the thing I love, and I say to all my clients, is follow the whispers. So it's very unlikely that you're going to be sitting at your office job and then one day you're going to be like, oh, I know, I meant to help people find their genius and go and impact the world and do it in a way that they learn to love themselves. It's come to me. Like, it's probably not going to come like that. It's probably going to be like a series of like, oh man, I'm not that happy at work. I'm not really enjoying, my relationship's not going that great. Oh, I really enjoy kite surfing. But, I kind of feel bummed on Monday morning. There's lots of little hints and whispers that are trying to guide you. And so it's not going to be this thing in neon lights that says go here. And I think that's one of the biggest messages I'd love to leave with people is I had an amazing career. I had like a dream career. I had a ton of money. I was flying big airplanes. I was flying all around the world. It was like wild. And there was something inside of me that was like, is that it? this ain't it. There's something else. And I thought it was go to a different airline. I thought maybe if I got paid more, maybe if I flew a different airplane, maybe a better company. And so I played that game for a little bit. And then it was like, this ain't it. There's more. There's more for you. And the only difference between me and the people that don't leave is I chose to listen to that. And the last 3 months leading up to leaving my flying career, holy shit, like anxiety through the roof. Have I got enough money? Am I making the right decision? I'm giving away this incredible career. Can I come back? What about, will I lose all my friends? Where am I going to live? Like, horrific. And fortunately, I was well supported. So my coach just kept pointing out, hey, that's just thoughts. That's fear. What's your heart saying? And I was like, my heart's saying I'm doing the right thing. My heart never wavered. It was always like, yep, do it. Do it. And my mind was like, what about the money? What about this is crazy? Nobody's going to hire you. You know? So I think that's the only difference is, if I had to put it in a word, it's courage. Like, I've just had the courage to follow the whispers, even when it felt crazy.
Why, throughout all the things that you've been through, you've gone through, all the different experiences, all the different insights, why do you keep coming back to love?
Simple question. It's because when and I know a lot of your listeners will relate to this, it's hard to do nothing. Like, I don't know if you feel this, but oftentimes I'll wake up in the morning and be like, fuck, I got to do this, I got to do that, I haven't done enough. I meant to do that thing yesterday, I never got around to it. It's like this kind of constant, especially in high performance, there's this constant drive to do stuff. And certainly true for me. And the moments when I get into really deep meditation and I can sink below that desperate feeling to be doing something, all I feel is love. Not loving, not in love, not wanting to express love, just love. I just feel like a big ball of love that is enough, done, complete, whole, perfect, beautiful. And so, like, I want people to have that experience. I want people to realize that that is what you are. You are just this big ball of love. You don't have to do anything. So, like, my dream is to have people peel all that should out of their life. I should be doing this. I should be doing more. God, I should be a millionaire by now. Peel back all the shoulds to find out that you are pure love. And then if you're inspired to do things like write poetry, fucking go for it.
That's awesome. You know, it's so interesting that that's the conclusion you've reached. Because one of my uncles, I love my uncle so much. He is so cool. And just awesome and wise and brilliant and intelligent and very moving and loving and just a very incredible individual, right? When he was in his late 20s, after leading a very intense spiritual practice, he sold all of his worldly possessions. He went out into the woods, the forest. He built a cabin and he sat there in silence, meditating for I think 10 months, just by himself. And he literally had the most amazing transformation in his life. And since then, he's now gone on to write incredibly powerful books, coach, Fortune 500 executives, give a TEDx talk, just, done incredible things. And so You know, I see him like, I see his spirit animal as like an owl. He's like this wise guy, and you know, not like a wise guy, but like a very wise individual. And I was talking to him about the purpose of life not too long ago, right? Because I decided that I wanted to figure out what mine was, really get clear on it. And so I sat down and, you know, I'm Jewish, so people, the scrolls, I took out a scroll and I literally just started writing. And it took me 5 hours. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And then I put it away and I called my uncle. And I didn't look at what I wrote. I called my uncle and I asked him, I was like, what is the purpose of life? And we were talking about it. And at the end, the outcome was, he said, love. Love is the purpose of life. And it is so fascinating to me that both of you, who I see a lot of similarities, both of you came to that same conclusion. It's amazing.
Do you feel it?
Do I feel love?
I mean, do you feel that? Do you feel that as a truth for yourself?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Which is cool.
Very cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
So, Nathan, I want to thank you so much, you know, for being on the show and sharing everything that you have. I feel like we've reached such an amazing place, that, you know, I feel like it's the right time to, and of course I want to be very respectful of your time, to start to wind down the show here.
Yeah, beautiful.
I think everybody. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think everybody who's watching and listening has a lot to chew on right now.
I hope so. Thank you
Yeah.
for creating such a safe environment. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being willing to dance with me in that environment. I do have one more question for you,
Oh, sure.
and this is a very
Love.
personal question. Well, that definitely could be answered, and
All right.
probably is. So I'm 24, and I just really want to know, what question should I be asking you, specifically you, that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Oh, that's a really good question. There's not much you've really left out in terms of questions. So things like purpose of life, why I do what I do, what's brought me to this point, those are the big questions I think a lot of people wouldn't ask. I think it's a question I ask on my podcast, and you might want to play with it yourself. But what is my dark side?
And what is it?
Well, that really backfired. What's my dark side? So I have a lot of self-loathing. And so, you know, that's why I wanted to say that, is because, you know, this interview has been very positive. But, you know, joy is still a struggle for me. The feeling of joy is still a struggle. So I have moments of contentment and excitement, but just that sort of more consistent feeling of joy is still a struggle for me. And so if I don't keep an eye on myself, I can very easily slip into I guess like self-loathing, or just beating myself up, or not feeling good enough. And that usually leads to alcohol, drink a lot of wine, binge eating, that kind of thing. And so, you know, once every 2 or 3 months, something will trigger me where I'll just go, fuck, it's just pointless. You know, I try everything and I still suck. And then I'll go and get drunk, eat a bunch of cookies, and lie there feeling depressed. And that's part of me as well. Like, I'm a beautiful human. I try to do my best. I my best at everything. I try to help people, and I have like a really dark part of me that, you know, can be suicidal, can be super depressed, can be just hopeless. So I just think it's important to share that.
Well, I'm grateful that you would you feel comfortable enough to share that with me.
Yeah.
So
Thanks,
appreciate the vulnerability. And
man. On
you know,
brand.
and I do just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. It's truly been been an honor to spend this time with you. So I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, man. I've loved it.
And me too. And to everybody who's watching, listening, your time is very valuable too. And so I'm very grateful that you would choose to share some of it with us today. So thank y'all very much. Y'all rock. I love y'all very much. And I will see you on the next episode. Take care now.